Welcome to the episode in which I drop literally everything. Welcome back to Movie Munchies. I'm Alexis. If you've never been here before, we watch things and we eat them. Today is treat day. Last week we watched Over the Garden Wall. Today we're making a cake for it. Let's get into it. Cake. Okay, so on behalf of Over the Garden Wall, we went with a sweet potato and molasses buttercream cake, which I was so excited to do. It started with the cake batter, butter, regular sugar, brown sugar, which I beat all together, but not before I dropped the camera. Let's get that one more time. It's not the only time. I don't know, I butterfingers for some reason. Not even just this day, cause I made this cake across a week's time. You know what I'm saying? Who knows? But you know what? Moving on. Beat it. Is that a word? I beat together the butter and the sugars. Oh, the recipe did not call, I referenced a recipe. I did tweak it, but, let's see. Let me give props where props is due. Southern sweet potato cake recipe by... Who was responsible? Amy. Hey, Amy. Thanks for the recipe. Amy Johnson. I'm Johnson. Oh, now you know my last name. Oh, well. Anyway, she called for just regular sugar, but I have to because I don't know why you wouldn't. You know what I mean? Sweet potato just kind of screams brown sugar to me. So I have the regular sugar and did the other half brown sugar. That's all that I did. For the dry ingredients... It was flour, baking soda, baking powder, salt, your regular stuff, and cinnamon and ginger for the spices. I sifted those together, gave them a little mix, and waited for the butter and the sugars to get all nice and fluffy. I added the eggs very slowly until they were well incorporated into the butter-sugar mixture, as you do. Added the vanilla, very basic recipe here starting out, and then I added, it was like 5 sweet potatoes, so give or take a cup. There you go. Once again, drop that too. I didn't even remember that part. Anyway, about a cup per potato was what was going on there. And then, of course, there was way too much for my stand mixer. I need to get a bigger one is what needs to happen. But I went ahead and dumped about half of that into another bowl, and put that back on the stand mixer, and added about half of the dry ingredients and wet the milk, alternating wet, dry, as you do. You know, this is like the regular process for making a cake. I think, what kind of milk was that? I want to say it was buttermilk, to be honest. Let me double check that. That is an important detail. It was whole buttermilk. What even is whole buttermilk? I don't know. Apparently there's fat-free buttermilk. I don't know how you could do that. Anyways, once I divided the batter and got all the dry and wet ingredients mixed into the halves, I put them back together into a larger bowl, mixed all of that together until I guessed it was mixed through enough. And then what I did was 2 8-inch pans and 3 6-inch pans, because I ended up making a lot of extra batter. I mean, I would prefer to have too much than too little, you know what I'm saying? I always overdo, which I think is fine, so I ended up with a little bit extra that I just put in another 6-inch pan. It ended up working out. We'll get more into that, but I put those in the oven. The baking time was a little rough for me because I couldn't figure out the baking because I was doing different sizes, you know what I'm saying, all at one time. And her recipe said put it in 9-inch pans. I did 8-inch pans and 6-inch pans, so I couldn't tell you how long I had them in the oven, but what I can tell you is I checked it about 12 times and that they somehow still ended up like just the tiniest bit underbaked. Like, it wasn't a problem in the end, but you can tell when you're eating it. Again, I don't know how long that lasted. On to the buttercream. So what I did for this was use the regular German buttercream that I usually use, and I just tweaked it a little bit. So I made the custard the exact same way that I usually do. Egg yolks, milk, flour, cornstarch, and a little bit of salt. Or I beat some room temperature butter, added powdered sugar, of course got it everywhere because I'm a mess. I don't know what was going on. What was going on this time? I don't know. Added the custard just like always to that powdered sugar mixture. The thing that I did different was instead of flavoring it with the vanilla extract and vanilla bean paste, I did the molasses. I have never worked with molasses before. I did not expect that smell. And I understand why. Because I did look at other molasses, buttercream molasses frosting recipes just to kind of get an idea of how much I should be adding. And it was not much on the other recipes. And I was like, is this going to be enough? When I took a sniff of that stuff, pardon my French. When I took a sniff, I was like, oh, I get it. This is strong. So I only added 2 tablespoons to my double batch of buttercream that I did. And then I added cinnamon to that to give it some extra flavor to complement the sweet potato cake. Did it, done it, own it. It turned out really, really good. And I was excited about it. That's going to go really good with the cake. That's going to go perfect with the cake. Oh my god. It tasted, sometimes, you just like, you put something in your mouth and you're like, this would go really good with this. That's what happened there. I could tell. It was a match made in heaven, you know what I mean? I couldn't have done a better job. Are you still recording? Jesus. Okay. Cream and candy rocks, yeah. I didn't do candy rocks, but what I did was decided to, you know how sometimes on top of the sweet potato casserole, you'll get that little crunchy, crumbly cinnamon sugar pecan topping on top of it? You know what I'm talking about. Come on now. You know what I'm talking. I decided to put that in the middle of the cake. Call that the candy rock bit. You know what I'm talking about? And I didn't record me making the but I had leftover heavy cream, so I decided to make whipped cream to go also inside the cake. You won't see that until I'm adding it, but I did it. Anyways, this is the crumble. Very, very easy. I just roughly chopped some pecans, about 2 cups. To that I added flour and brown sugar again, cinnamon, and then some melted butter. I mixed those together with a fork at first and then went in with my hands, which were clean. And I kind of treated it like I did the crumble that I used for my Mean Girls cupcakes. I know you didn't watch that one. If you did, you're my best friend now. Anyways, I just spread it out on a baking sheet, put it in the oven for like 6-7 minutes maybe. Alright, we're stacking them anyway, sorry. My language. I put down an 8-inch layer, did a buttercream border. As you can see, it's a little bit wet. I think that's from the syrup, but honestly, it wasn't too bad, the underbakedness. I made a well with buttercream to hold my feelings, yes. I crumbled some of the crumble in there. And then I topped that part with the whipped cream that I did not film me making. If you did watch my Mean Girls cupcake episode? Video, you remember maybe that I talked about adding cream of tartar just to stabilize whipped cream, and how you don't want to add too much because you'll definitely notice that as I did that. I added a little bit too much cream of tartar to the whipped cream because I wanted it to be, I didn't want it to outside of the cake when I stacked it, you know what I'm saying? Because my feelings tend to do that. If you've seen my other cake videos, you know. There was an aftertaste. That's all I gotta say on it. Don't put too much cream of tartar in your whipped cream. Or in anything, really. Anyways, I made a second buttercream border. And then put the other cake layer on top. And just did a little crumb coat and chill. and eventually frosted it, which you won't see me do, but it happened. So I did the same thing with the 6-inch cakes, and here's what had happened. I told you I did an extra pan of 6-inch, which in some ways worked out better because the top layer, which was the 6-inch, I wanted to look like a tree. But what had happened was I added 4 layers of cake, and once I did that, it looked like comically tall. So I was kind of sitting there like, should I leave it? Should I take the top layer off? Ultimately, I decided to go ahead and go with it. So I started to give it a crumb coat. And then what I noticed was that it started to lean. So I tried straightening it up, myself. But of course, once a cake starts leaning, it's not going to stay that way. So I ran and grabbed a bubble tea straw and decided to poke that in the middle of the cake. And, I was quite certain that would work. But then what I discovered was that the second to last layer was breaking in half. Like it was splitting this way. And there was no way that I could keep going that way. So I I took apart the whole thing and took out that layer and then put it back together. What did I do with that layer? You'll never know. That's all I gotta say. It was a very messy process. But you know what? At the end of it, I actually liked the height of I liked the height of the 3 layers better than the 4. So it ended up working out overall. Put that in the fridge to chill, frosted it a little later, and we're gonna move on to the cream puffs. Okay, so I started with the filling first. Very, very simple. It was 2 packs of vanilla pudding, some heavy cream, and whole milk. And what was the recipe that I used for this? Who are you? Shelly? I used the recipe by Shelly. It was a very, very simple... I mean, I've seen people make cream puffs. I've never made cream puffs before. I've seen people make cream puffs before because I don't think it's a surprise, but I watch baking shows not like night and day. If I need to have something going in the background, that's more than likely what I've got on is like the food channel and baking competitions and things like that. So I've seen people make cream puffs. I got the concept of it. I know it in theory it's a simple process. I wasn't so much I think because I had seen it done so many times, I was kind of confident that I wouldn't utterly mess it up. Anyways, the filling that Shelly recommended was this very, very simple one, and I think I would do again. What I did differently was I added pumpkin pie spice to it, because what had happened was I forgot that I wanted the filling to be pumpkin, and I had already gone to the store. But I had pumpkin pie spice in my cabinet, so I was like, you know what, that'll work. So I added the pumpkin pie spice to her filling, make sure that she suggested, and all you had to do was sit that in the fridge and let it set. So to make the cream puffs themselves, so simple. I thought it would be more complicated, like that there was some like little thing that you would have to do to get it right, but it honestly, I don't know. It turned out surprisingly well the first time. It's a simple process, and I knew it, but I was like, it can't be that easy. You know what I'm saying? That's it can't be that easy. I have to screw something up somewhere. But I didn't. No. All it is you melt some butter with some water until it's got to a rolling boil, it said, and then you add some flour. Form it into a kind of dough, then you put it into the stand mixer, or if you have a wooden spoon, you can use a wooden spoon. I don't have wooden spoons for whatever reason, don't ask me why. You add your eggs one at a time, and make sure they're all incorporated, because you don't actually know how many eggs you're gonna need. You want it to get to a specific consistency. I did use all of the eggs that she suggested, because of course she's tested this recipe out. She knows what she's talking about. But yeah, it was 4 eggs. And you want it to get to, I think the trick is that when you pull it up and it falls down, you got like a little triangle shape or a V or whatever. Y'all, so what I decided to do, since the cream puffs were representing Greg, right? and I wanted to make them with a pumpkin filling, but I added the pumpkin pie spice. I was like, oh, what if I make the cream puffs themselves pumpkins and just put them on the cake? They had the essence of pumpkin, you know? I was like, let me go ahead and dye the dough orange so that they'll look somewhat like pumpkin. They'll give the idea of pumpkins. You know what I'm talking about? And ultimately that worked out. But of course, I was this close to forgetting. You know how many times I've forgotten to dye things? I was this close to forgetting to dye. I was just about to put them on that baking sheet, but I remembered at the last second and went ahead and dyed the dough orange. Just added a little bit of red and a little bit of yellow and mixed it up until it was a pretty color of pumpkins. And then I put those in a piping bag, dropped the mixing bowl. What is that? Number 3? Is that the third thing that we dropped? I don't know. And I just piped in little swirls. I wasn't trying to be like meticulous about the shape or whatever. You know what I'm saying? I patted the tops down with a little wet finger. Put them in the oven for like 20-25 minutes, something like that. They turned out so perfectly. I had a big one from the batter left over. That one ended up deflating, which I expected because it didn't get to bake it long enough. But the small ones came out so beautifully and I was so happy about it. I discovered the advice that you should leave your oven cracked open after the cream puffs are done. Leave the cream puffs in there while they start to cool, because if you take them straight out, then they will deflate. These didn't, because I heeded that advice and I left them in the oven with the door cracked open. But once they were fully cooled, I took that filling and I piped it inside. It was amazingly difficult to squeeze that. I keep wanting to say bad words. I do it all the time in my other videos, but for some reason today, I just don't want to. It was hard to get the filling in the cream puffs. I think it was just too cold, so I should have let it sit out at least for a little bit before I started piping it in there. Maybe I needed a bigger piping tip. Who knows? And in order to start, because they're hollow in the middle, the cream puffs, so to start the hole for poking the piping tip in, I used a little toothpick and just gave it a little, a little wriggle so that I could get the piping tip in there without busting through the whole cream puff. Anyways, moving on. Me too. I'm with you. I feel the same way. So, I decided to do a little frog. Jason Funderburger is his last name that he ended up with. I like President. Name him POTUS. I decided to make a little frog head. Initially, I was kind of stuck conceptually on how to pull that off. I just decided to make it simple. I didn't want to make it complicated, so I just did a little head. I shaped it as best I could and then added little spheres on the top for his eyes. And then I stuck them together with some water, because if gum paste works like fondant, then water helps it to stick to itself. You don't quote me on that. It seemed to work, so I imagine that gum paste works like fondant in that way as well. And then what I did was I used a piping tip to cut out some circles from some white fondant and then used that as his eyeballs. Delicately stuck those on to the little spheres that I had already made. Then I let that sit for days before I did anything else. So what I also did was made the little rock that Greg keeps in his pocket. The rock doesn't have a name, huh? It's a rock fact. It's just a rock fact. So basically did the same thing. Kept it simple. Keep it simple, stupid. Colored some fondant. I used both black and brown because the rock kind of seems to have a little bit of a brown tint to it. It still turned out pretty gray. Anyways, I shaped it as best that I could. It's a rock. You know, how much can you mess up a rock shape? You know what I'm saying? Anyways, I did the same thing as I did for the frog and cut out some facial features from white fondant using a piping tip, and then I just kind of free-handed the mouth. The second attempt did not turn out as good as the first one, but it also was not a disaster, so it's whatever. You know what I'm saying? That's why you make more than one. So I just stuck those onto the little rock that I made. Everything I did out of gum paste so that it would dry hard. And once they were dry, days later, I went in with my food safe markers and colored them. So I did the little goofy eyes on the rock, and then his little tongue, and he has like a yellow border around his mouth. I guess that are his lips or something. Hell well. And then the little black in the middle for the gaping hole that is his mouth. Then what I did was took some green food coloring. I don't remember what kind of green it was, but not like a bright green. It's more like a foresty green. I painted on the little shape for the frog's mouth, and then the top of his head, the little squiggle, the green patch that goes down his back. I didn't paint the back of it. Wasn't necessary. Wasn't going to be showing. But I did do the top of his head where it kind of starts to show on his forehead between his eyes. I added glycerin to the food coloring just to kind of make it a little more liquidy so it'd be easier to paint. It did make it a little wet, but it ended up working out. And the color was really intense, so what I did ultimately was I patted it with a paper towel just to kind of lift some of that away. Then I went in with the black and did his eyes and his nose and the line for his mouth. Little frown that's just so funny, because why? It turned out so cute. Even better than I thought it would. Rawr. Okay. Decorating the cake, yeah. So when I frosted the 6-inch cake, I did a rough job because I wanted it to look like a birch tree. My first initial idea was to kind of do like a forest of birch trees, but I couldn't figure out, I couldn't figure it out in my head how I wanted to frost the cake in that sense. I was trying to look at pictures of birchwood cakes. There were plenty of references, but all of them was just like one, you know? I'm so tired. It was like, what? I'm not going to finish my thought. I had one idea, and then I decided to go with another. That's what you need to know. So I gave it a rough frost, let it sit in the fridge overnight, and then decided to go in with some brown food coloring and paint on the lines for the birchwood tree. Now, watch. Just watch it. Just watch. Fool me once, right? Shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. This is why you stick some buttercream underneath the cake board so that your cake don't be sliding everywhere. The thing was, though, that this was the top tier and I was going to need to move that on top of the bottom tier. So I didn't do that. But anyways, lucky for me, the frost job was rough. So I just, it was simple to go in with my finger, just kind of smooth out my fingerprints and pretend that they were never there. You know what I'm saying? So I painted the lines all around the cake, and then I did a little swirl at the top as though it was just a stump. I wasn't trying to be difficult with it. I just needed the idea of a birchwood tree. You know what I'm saying? I think I got that. I wasn't that intimidated this time around when it came to covering the bottom tier with black fondant. And I think it's just because it was just an 8-inch cake. It's not horribly huge. And I've done it a couple of times before, so I was a little more confident going into this one. And I did a decent job of covering it, actually. There were no speed bumps, thank God, after nearly dropping the other cake. Twice, 3 times, who even knows, really? After dropping literally everything else, Jesus Christ, Butterfingers galore. Anyways, I got the fun on the cake and it went well, and I'm glad. I let it sit in front of a fan for a little while because I live in the South. It's humid, it's warm, even in the fall time. So it started to sweat immediately, the fondant, but once I had it sitting in front of a fan for a little while, it kind of dried off. All that I did for the bottom tier was draw a silhouette of the beast. I tested out just to make sure that it would show up using the black food marker on a smaller piece of fondant just to see if it would show up, and it did. And so I went ahead and just drew on the silhouette. That's all he really is a silhouette, of the beastie. And then I took some of my white food coloring and painted his glowing white eyes, and oh my god. It was so creepy. You can see it on camera, but when you look at it face on real life, it's just you know what I mean? Kind of like he is in the mini-series. A shadowy figure in the background with glowing white eyes. It's just what is that? You know what I'm saying?
Yuck. That is so creepy.
So then I had to stack the cakes. I put in my bubble tea straws. I wasn't too concerned about this one either because it was just a simple 2-tiered cake. Before I did that though, I decided very, very, very last minute, I decided to add a sprinkle of powdered sugar over the top of the bottom tier to look like snow, because we end up in winter at the end of the little mini series and there's snow everywhere and everything's dead and cold and hopeless. Anyway, I thought it was a cool touch and I'm glad I did that. Then I added the top tier. There you go. Success. Then all you had to do was decorate it. So I went on the hunt for a lantern, and in my head it was always one of those rectangular ones, you know what I'm saying? Like this one. I know it's not the same, the lantern in the miniseries is one of those little round ones. I don't know. In my head, on this cake, it was always one of the square ones, so. The idea, it's the idea that counts. Anyways, I really, really wanted a black one. I knew it had to be small enough to sit on top of a 6-inch cake. I went to Michael's to try and look for something. They had the perfect ones, but they only came in a pack of 6, and that joker was $20-something, and I was like, I am not buying this whole pack of 6 lanterns when I only need one for $20-something, which I do not have. So I found something that I was going to use as an alternative, but then on my way home, I ended up stopping by the dollar store, and lo and behold, they had these little ones that already had the little candle thing in it and a switch on the bottom that you could turn on and off. It's made of plastic, and it was white, so I had to paint it myself, and to sit it on the cake, I just stuck on some aluminum foil on the bottom. But you know what? It couldn't have been more perfect. It was the perfect thing to go on top, and it looks so good. And then I added the little frog, the little rock, and a whole candy trail of Jolly Ranchers, because we talked about how Wort is a bland kind of sour. It's not that Jolly Ranchers are bland, they're just sour. But you get the idea. It's also hard candy. You know what I'm saying? And he's a little... You know what I'm saying? Then we got the little quote-unquote pumpkin cream puffs. to look like the pumpkins. I had to figure out where to place those. Ultimately decided to just place them on the bottom. Added more little candies for a candy trail. They stuck real nicely to the top tier. And then I added some autumn leaves. I mean, that was always in my head for the design from the very beginning. Because this is a Halloween cake. It's a Halloween mini-series. It's fall, it's autumn, it's everything you love, you know what I'm saying? It's candy, it's pumpkins, it was both so beautiful, so beautiful. I fell in love instantly.
Holy sh**. Oh, I love it.
Ladies and gentlemen.
I'm starting to get sad now. They just get better and better, and it makes... I don't want to cut it. I think this one is my favorite so far. I am so in love with it. It turned out way better than I imagined it would in my head. I don't want to cut it. Let's just start with a cream puff. Woo! Filled to the brim. I did my best, man. Ooh, they look so good. I heard the choir. I hear the choir singing. Oh, I have never made cream puffs before. That's so good. So good. My soul. Oh, my soul. I don't want to do it. Ain't that just the way? Even just like that. Even just like that. It looks good. I'm so tempted to just eat that one whole, but I won't. It's a rock fact. Bro, even just like this, it looks good, man. The lantern is lit and everything. Look at it. I painted that myself. Damn it. I'm gonna keep it stacked today.
Ooh.
You can see where it's a little underdone, but you know, it's not to the point that anyone's gonna die, you know what I'm saying? Holy. God damn it! What the? Oh my god. It's good. It's good. Well, even there's nothing to say. Thanks for eating with me. Hell.
I mean, I'm tempted just to leave it at that, you know what I'm saying? Like, how do I explain what it even tasted like? It's my favorite thing that I've made so far. That's what I will tell you. If you want to know what it tastes like, go try making it yourself. And I suggest that you do because it's worth it. It is. If you like sweet potato casseroles, you'll love it. That's the description I'm gonna give you. But it was better. Gasp! Yes, I know. It was. It is. And you know what? I still have some in the fridge. I think I'm about to eat it right now. I'm sad because there's not that much left. Because it was my brother's birthday the day after. 2 days after I finished making it. So I took it to feed my family and they ate the whole bottom tier. Anyways, this was a delight. It was. I absolutely loved doing this one. I loved the final product. There's literally nothing more to say about it. Thank you for watching. Subscribe, please, and thank you. Leave a comment down below. What is your favorite Thanksgiving food? What is your favorite Halloween treat? We're in the holiday times. It's all about the food, you know what I'm saying? And also, if you have any suggestions for what I should be watching and or making cakes and or other foods for, let me know that as well. Like the video, click the bell for notifications. I'll see you next time. Bye.